How I got into immigration. Well, it's very personal to me. My wife is an immigrant. Her name is Laura Sofia Gallegos Rondell Treviño. If there's a lot of names in it, it pretty much means you're probably Latino, and yes, she is Latino. She is from Guatemala. I was going through a Bible program in 2011, 2012 in Memphis, Tennessee, and she came from El Salvador for that year to study the Bible. And we met one another during that year, and we became friends, just friends at that time. And then at the end of the program in August of 2012, she ended up going back to El Salvador because she only had a visa, a 6-month, 8-month visa. And so she went back to El Salvador. We disconnected as friends for about a year or so. And then in 2013, around September, her and we reconnected through social media outlets. So email, Skype, Instagram, Twitter, all those. We ended up building a love for one another and friendship. And I went down there to see her for the first time in July of 2014. And this is when I barely asked her if we can start dating. It was a guy thing because we fell in love with one another being 1,500 miles apart, her in El Salvador, me in Memphis. And right now I'm really thankful for social media outlets because that's the only way we're able to communicate together. And went down there in July 2014. We got to see each other. I was there for 2 weeks, got to meet her family. It was my first time ever being in El Salvador. And just through that time, I after those 2 weeks, I came back to Memphis, and I was like, I'm going to marry her. Like, she's my wife. Now I need to figure out how is that going to happen, right? And so I ended up researching immigration petitions, things of that sort. Started thinking about how and when I can propose to her. And so I went back in December of 2014, and we got engaged on December 22nd, I believe. And right in that moment, we got engaged. Again, I stayed a couple weeks. I came back to Memphis, started again to research the paperwork. It took a long time to research the paperwork just because of the fact that immigration is so complex. The visas are so complex. We had to figure out the right one, and at times some of the visas might take longer than others. And so we figured out that it was an I-130 petition. And so I went back on February 10th. I went back to El Salvador, and then February 14th, 2015, on Valentine's Day, we got married in El Salvador. Stayed a week there for the honeymoon, and right after that, the honeymoon, after that week, I had to come back to the United States, one, to work, and to, again, file the I-130 petition. And so I filed the I-130 petition, and the wait time was around 2 years. And so we filed the I-130 petition, and we had to wait and wait and wait. And I would log into my USCIS account every day, and I would look, and it would say, still reviewing your petition. And through that year and 7 months, God began to, one, grow a dependence more on him because we were so far apart. It was just really hard emotionally, physically, spiritually, just being away from your spouse, having to talk on the phone. And then I would go there every 4 months or so, and I'd stay there for 2 weeks, and it'd just be so hard to come back, just being in tears, knowing that we don't know when the I-130 petition is going to approve. And then finally, after a year and 7 months, it did approve. And so, but during that whole process, God began to open up my heart about my own history as a Mexican American, and how I was born in Texas, but my grandma is from Mexico. My biological father is from Mexico, and God just began to grow my heart for the immigrant. And through even the research of the I-130 petition, I began to grow a heart for understanding more of the complexities of the immigration petitions and legislation in general, and how broken it is. And then more importantly, it was just through my wife, going there, visiting her, and then finally after a year and 7 months when she came to Memphis, Tennessee, or 2 years, around a year and 7 months, 2 years. She came to Tennessee. Finally, her petition was finally approved. And just through her being an immigrant and destroying every stereotype of what an immigrant is, because she loves Jesus, she's educated, she is a loving person. I've just been able to grow my heart for the immigrant. And God just kind of opened that up for me and her to find ways to advocate for immigrants and love the immigrant, and actually place that our story not in a way of, hey, everybody needs to come legally, because we did come legally, but a way for us to understand that we're 1% of 99% of immigrants who try to come to the United States, and they wait 1 year and 1 year and 9, 8 months, 10 months for us is nothing compared to what other immigrants go through. They're waiting 15, 20, 30 years for their petition just to get looked at. And so God has used our story as a way to, one, be an advocate for immigration, but two, show and seek for more empathy for the immigrant amongst us in our country, and immigrants who are trying to come here. And so we started the Immigration Project. We inspire the church to view immigration and love immigrants the way God intended, and we're trying our best around the Southeast to advocate biblically, to encourage legislators to pass legislation that lines up with biblical principles, and we are trying to conversate with churches to bring up this topic and to have conversations within the church on this topic. And that's why I'm also thankful for the Legacy Conference, because the Legacy Conference is bringing up this conversation and allowing us to have workshops, to have these dialogues that the church so desperately needs.